Gurmagat, Carhirlig, Minister, the Labour Party have tried to be as reasonable and as constructive as possible in these most trying of times, particularly in the education space. We know that there is no easy decision for you to make. We appreciate that. We appreciate that you were faced with a difficult scenario last week, and we also appreciate the efforts that you made to listen to education spokespeople who spoke to you on Monday about the concerns we all had about a cohort of students who are going to be severely, profoundly affected by school closure. We appreciated also the fact that you gave us that opportunity to share our views with you, because otherwise it would have been only till today that we got a chance to speak. You made an effort to open up schools on the basis of those with additional needs and indeed for the Leaving Cert. It didn't work out for particular reasons, and then you reversed that decision, and I felt that was the right thing to do, because there was no way we could open schools until schools were ready to open. However, I have to say there have been a number of things that have happened over the last number of days that have really made it difficult for the likes of myself to continue with that goodwill. I think your letter that was sent to each school around the country to be passed on to students was ill-advised. It has been described to me as political and divisive. Your Cabinet colleagues decided to descend on media over the weekend and to try to make liars out of the trade unions in terms of consultation. And while today it is welcome that there seems to be a movement towards the reopening of schools and special schools for those with additional needs, it is unfortunate that it was released within minutes of us having this debate. I think it would have been better for us to have a little bit more detail. And indeed, if you are earnest about your wish to engage with opposition spokespeople, I think it would have been worthy of you to have a discussion with us in order that we can show leadership in order to make these difficult decisions happen. On the issue of additional needs, I'd like to ask you, Minister, if it is possible, or if you are advocating for those who work with young people with additional needs, staff, teachers, SNAs, etc., if they are going to be prioritised for the next available round of vaccinations. Can I ask you in terms of the Leaving Cert, because you are quite right, there is a huge amount of stress and anxiety within the student body. The Labour Party were the only party not to call for the cancellation of last year's Leaving Cert because we were unconvinced of a replacement system being put in place that would be fair. Now, however, we have more time now, and a lot of the issues that were rolled out last year, you reversed, and we were supportive of you reversing, particularly the school profiling element of it. However, we would suggest to you that an early decision on this is necessary, and we would say in February, because notwithstanding what you're saying and notwithstanding what various voices are saying, it is intolerable for somebody in sixth year, and indeed for a junior cert student, for the level of uncertainty that is arising, having lost 11 weeks of tuition in the last academic year, and indeed for the month of January. And I think if we're honest with ourselves, you know it's much easier to close schools than it is to reopen them. With the numbers that are circulating around, with the death count rising, that it is unlikely that we'll see schools open before the midterm break and possibly before Patrick's Day and possibly beyond. I would ask this of you, Minister, because we all mentioned disadvantage. I know in my contribution to you, I mentioned the issue of 16-year-old students who have no legal requirement to be in school and the fact that they may be lost to the system, and many have already been lost to the system. We need to begin talking about post-COVID education in Ireland, what that vision will be. Can I ask you if preparations are being made to repair the profound damage that is being done by school closures, which aren't your fault and aren't your government's fault, notwithstanding the fact that you didn't take NPHET advice in December? Can we speak to or focus on young people in disadvantaged backgrounds, people with additional needs obviously, but particularly disadvantaged, poverty? And can we have an investment or a post-COVID vision of radical investment in individual tuition, in reduced class sizes, in resources for such schools or such individuals in mainstream schools who are profoundly disadvantaged, who have been as I say, damaged and will be damaged by the continuing school closure. So my 3 points, Minister, just to repeat them. On the additional needs announcement that you've made today, which I haven't gone across all the detail of, I hope it will be able to be worked out and it is successful. I am sincere in that. But I want you to speak to vaccinations. On the Leaving Cert, is it your intention to make absolutely clear in February as to what your intention is? Because, to be honest, it's very hard to find government convincing that the Leaving Cert and Junior Cert will continue, as you say. And thirdly, in terms of disadvantage, can we have a conversation about a radical package to redress the damage that has been done by school closure, and that we don't reopen schools whenever they are opened and pretend that damage doesn't exist?
Okay, Ara, you have 40 seconds, and I'll hold you to it if you want to respond to some of that. Okay,
I'm responding to both in terms of, if I could take the opportunity specifically, Deputy O'Riordan, I do want to acknowledge the engagement that has been forthcoming from the opposition spokespersons in education, and I appreciate that. Just in terms of the specific points that you raise, in terms of consultation with the unions, I want to be very clear that I most definitely engaged with the unions on Monday of last week, engaged with all of the partners in education as regards their concerns and issues in terms of the reopening of schools. And indeed, I'd have to say to you, engagement with all of the partners in education has been ongoing since I took up my ministry on the 27th of June. And if that engagement had not been possible, we would never have achieved the reopening of our schools. The reopening of our schools was on the back of very considerable engagement and agreement and support within the partners of education for the processes that were being undertaken by the Department of Education. Specifically in terms of the staff and teachers and the SNAs and vaccine, you will be aware that I did initially raise it in terms of the need for the school community to be included on the priority list. I was very pleased when that actually happened. We have again re-engaged with the task force in terms of looking for consideration and the need for the school community as frontline workers to be accommodated as quickly as possible and as urgently as possible, and those discussions will continue. In terms of disadvantage, you would be aware, and I acknowledge your own specific interest in this area of disadvantage, and indeed the many proposals you have brought in this regard, but I think you will acknowledge too that there has been considerable investment by the department in terms of disadvantage, and that will be ongoing and will continue.
The Deputy